I've been on a real nostalgia trip, diving into books, old newspapers, magazines, and even those forgotten corners of the internet to see what people thought about sitcoms, from the very first ones to the shows we're watching today. In these videos, we're going to take a look at some sitcoms that might have faded from your memory. Some were absolute gems, while others, let's just say they might be best left to the history books. This video covers a period from 1970 to 1976. The first new sitcom of the 1970s is not only forgotten but also officially a lost series. The sitcom was Charlie's Grants, and the pun on Charlie's aunt seems hysterically funny compared to the lacklustre scenario of the show. It was written by surrealist playwright N.F. Simpson with what has been euphemistically described as support from John Fortune and John Wells. It was supposed to be a satirical poke at the arts grant system. It was produced by Ian McNaughton, fresh from success with the first series of Monty Python's Flying Circus. However, the Python charm did not work on this production. The Charlie of the title was Lord Charlie, played by Willoughby Goddard, an impoverished aristocrat trying to game the grant system to further his own artistic endeavours and persuade the conscientious Miss Manger, that's Hattie Jakes, from the Heritage Trust to help him. Various sources described the show as strange or surreal, not surprising considering who was responsible for the script, but it was not a hit. It was tucked away in a late Sunday night time slot and was unable to get a proper audience. This is likely what stopped it from getting a second series. It was N.F. Simpson's final time writing for television. There were only 6 episodes and all the tapes were wiped. Enthusiasts have discovered domestic soundtracks recording of episode 1, 3 and 4, but they've not been made publicly available. It is probably not a good idea for a newspaper theatre critic to write a sitcom in case their contemporaries do a hatchet job. Despite this, Peter Lewis threw caution to the wind and wrote a half-hour comedy which he sent to Michael Mills at the BBC. He'd previously written sketches for That Was the Week That Was, but wanted to write comedy plays rather than skits and sketches. He had been inspired by his early days as a jobbing reporter covering funerals and had picked up some stories from the undertakers he met. Michael Mills liked the script, and it was produced for the BBC Comedy Playhouse series in 1970. Then Michael Mills asked for 6 more episodes, but Lewis only really had wanted to write a one-off play. Despite not being confident he had enough material, he decided to give it a go. Bill Fraser was cast as the pompous, grouchy and stubborn funeral director, with Raymond Hartley as his business partner. There were just 6 episodes, which was a relief to Lewis, who was out of ideas. Part of the reason for not commissioning a further series was due to a complaint from a viewer who saw the show after having buried her uncle early that day. Michael Mills took this very badly and even made a public apology on television. Interestingly, ITV's In Loving Memory, set in a 1920s funeral parlour, was piloted in 1969, but a series was not commissioned until 1979. Though originally produced on colour videotape, only black and white telerecordings of That's Your Funeral have survived. A moderately successful film was produced in 1972, which has been made available on DVD. The next forgotten sitcom is rather unusual, as it starred a highly successful Irish musical trio as navvies working on building the fictitious Waterloo line of the London Underground. The trio were the Bachelors, brothers Dec and Con Cluskey and John Stokes, making their first comedy television appearance. Under and Over started off as a BBC Comedy Playhouse pilot in January 1971, and a series of 6 episodes was commissioned. Their characters, named Dec, Con and John, were rogues and picked up 6 pay packets instead of 3, since nobody ever came down into the tunnel to count the workers. Outside work, they were interested in fast cars, girls, drink and nightclubs. While all three bachelors came from Dublin, John Stokes played a Protestant from Ulster to allow for north-south banter and jokes of a Catholic versus Protestant nature. The trio started singing and playing music while still in school, and in 1957 became known as the Harmonichords, changing to the Bachelors in 1960. Their first single was Charmaine, a song originally composed for the 1926 silent movie What Price Glory. It was recorded in a country and western pop folk style, and the record was a hit, peaking at number 6 in Britain and number 8 in Ireland in 1963. They went on to record over 90 more singles and 25 albums. They had international success. Their only UK number 1 single was Diane in 1964, originally written as the theme for the 1927 silent movie Seventh Heaven. By 1968 their chart presence had peaked. They were still popular live and continued to play the cabaret circuit. Presumably the sitcom was an attempt at diversifying their career. The sitcom pilot was directed by David Askey, who had produced 49 episodes of Dixon of Dock Green, many sitcoms, and would go on to direct No Honestly, Sorry and Surgical Spirit, among others. The trio worked really well with him, but a different producer was assigned to the series, and as Deck claims, he was an alcoholic. So they had no real direction and they were left to their own devices. By the 6th episode, Deck's patience with the director was running out. He said, "It was just a shambles." The brothers hoped for another series, but it had been scheduled at the same time as ITV's action series The Persuaders, so although audiences apparently enjoyed the show, the viewing figures did not convince BBC management. The Rough with the Smooth was another pilot broadcast as part of the BBC's Comedy Playhouse series in 1971. For many Playhouse episodes, that is the end of the story. There's never any guarantee a series will be commissioned, so it must have been a surprise for a series to be made 4 years later. It was written by and starred Tim Brooke-Taylor and John Junkin, so it was possible they were just unavailable to make the series due to other commitments. Tim Brooke-Taylor was busy being a goodie, and John Junkin was writing and appearing in several other shows, including The Goodies, in the intervening period. Richard Woodville, played by Tim Brooke-Taylor, is a suave, sophisticated, smooth-talking ex-Etonian who doesn't have to try too hard with the ladies. Harold King, John Junkin, on the other hand, is a working-class East Londoner, rough around the edges and who lacks the social skills of his flatmate. Together they work on a terrible radio serial and coexist in less than peace and harmony. When not writing scripts, they are chasing attractive women with all the sexist behaviour typical of television from the Benny Hill era. Had it been worth the wait? Not really. It has been somewhat ironically compared with The Odd Couple of Jack Lemmon and Walter Matthau. It's really not in the same comedy territory. It was more in the realms of men behaving badly. After the Playhouse pilot, there were just 6 further episodes. With the BBC's Dad's Army about to end, it seems ITV wanted to take advantage of the opportunity to pick up an audience already showing an interest in 1940s wartime nostalgia. Yanks Go Home was the show they created, giving it a big build-up including a TV Times cover and article. It's just that they decided to broadcast the show in the year of America's bicentennial celebrations, which seems insensitive, bearing in mind the title. It is the stereotypical story of the arrival of American troops who are overpaid, oversexed and over here. They cause inevitable upheaval in the small Lancashire town of Warrington as they are met with both joy and animosity by the locals. Unusually for a British sitcom, there were several writers, each contributing 1 or more episodes, so the characterisations were somewhat inconsistent and lacked depth. The show was criticised for inaccuracies that would be glaringly obvious to most people who knew anything about 1940s, like references to the American Expeditionary Force who fought on the Western Front in World War I, not World War II. It ran for 13 episodes over 2 series, but it was only moderately successful, although 1 episode in January 1977 did make the top 20 most viewed programmes chart with 6.7 million homes watching. The subject matter had already been covered by Dad's Army itself in the episode titled My British Buddy, and there was not much new ground to cover after that. Julian Roach, who wrote one episode, also wrote a book based on the series published by Granada in 1977. The entire series was released on DVD by Network in 2012. Honestly, finding information about some of these sitcoms felt like a detective story. I had to dig deep online, searching every possible list of comedies and sitcoms ever made. These are shows that hardly made a ripple. They aired once, then mostly vanished without trace. Did any of these ring a bell with you? Did you see them back in the day? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, and stay tuned for the next video where we'll be exploring sitcoms from 1977 to 1986.